The puppy I adopted was supposed to be simple. Post some flyers, find the owner, feel good about helping. But when he disappeared that first afternoon and came back with a scarred pit bull walking beside him like a bodyguard, I realized I hadn't rescued him at all. He'd rescued someone else first. I know what you're thinking. Pit bulls are dangerous, unpredictable, and aggressive. That's what Sidney Brown said when he showed up, demanding both dogs back. That's what the neighbors whispered when they saw me standing between a stranger and two traumatized animals. That's probably what you'd think too if you saw what I saw that night. A massive dog with torn skin, dried blood on his collar, and scars that told stories I didn't want to imagine. But here's the thing nobody tells you about pit bulls. They're not born fighters. They're loyal, protective, and when they've been broken by violence, they don't attack the people who show them kindness. They collapse in relief. I stopped believing in easy rescues the moment I saw them together. That little mixed-breed puppy I'd named Scout, barely 20 pounds, standing in front of a 60-pound pit bull like he was daring me to turn them away. The pit bull wasn't growling or lunging. He was just standing there, ribs showing through stretched skin, head lowered, eyes watching me like he'd been disappointed too many times to hope anymore. Something about them felt wrong, like the world had failed them both. And I needed to know why. Yesterday was supposed to be quiet. Simple, even. I'd been living alone for 3 months. Divorce does that. Turns a full house into an empty one real fast. No voices, no footsteps, just the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own breathing. I'd started taking long walks just to get out, to feel like I was part of the world again instead of watching it through windows. The park near my neighborhood was my usual route. Nothing special about it. Worn benches, a rusted swing set, grass that needed mowing. But it was peaceful, and peace was all I had left to hold on to. It was just past dusk when I saw him. A small shape huddled beneath the bench closest to the tree line. At first, I thought it was a bag someone had left behind, but then it moved, shifted, trembled. I stopped walking. The puppy was tiny, maybe 3 months old, a mixed breed with brown and white patches. His fur was matted with dirt, his ribs visible even from a distance. No collar, no tags, just wide, terrified eyes staring up at me like he was waiting for the next bad thing to happen. I crouched down slowly, didn't reach out, didn't make a sound. Just wait. He watched me, didn't run, didn't come closer, just watched. "Hey, buddy," I said quietly. "You lost." His ears twitched. His tail stayed tucked tight against his body. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the water bottle I always carried, unscrewed the cap, poured some into my cupped hand, and held it out. The puppy hesitated. His little body shook, but his eyes locked onto the water like he hadn't seen any in days. Slowly, so slowly, he crept forward. His nose touched my palm first, sniffing, testing. Then his tongue. Then he was drinking, desperate and frantic, like he didn't know when he'd get another chance. When the water was gone, he sat back on his haunches and looked at me, really looked at me, like he was trying to figure out if I was safe or just another stranger who'd hurt him eventually. "Come on," I said, standing up. "Let's get you home." I didn't have a leash, didn't have treats or toys or any of the things you're supposed to have when you bring a dog home. But when I started walking, he followed. Not close, but steady, 3 feet behind me the whole way. Like he'd decided I was worth the risk. I named him Scout that night. He wouldn't sleep unless he was touching my arm. Like he was afraid I'd disappeared, he closed his eyes. The next morning, I did everything right. Posted flyers on every corner of the neighborhood. Shared his photo in local lost and found groups online. Called the shelters and vet clinics to see if anyone had reported a missing puppy. Nothing. By afternoon, Scout had stopped shaking. He ate from my hand, drank from a bowl I set down by the couch, even wagged his tail once when I scratched behind his ears. Everything felt hopeful, manageable, and then he disappeared. If Scout's story is pulling at your heart right now, don't just scroll past. Hit subscribe. Be part of a community that believes every survivor deserves a second chance. 1 click. That's all it takes.
That afternoon, when I realized Scout was gone, the panic came fast and irrational. I'd only turned my back for 5 minutes. Maybe less. Just long enough to carry in the groceries, set the bags on the counter, close the trunk. But when I came back inside, the house felt different. Too quiet, too still. Scout? Nothing. I checked the living room, the bedroom, under the couch where he'd been napping an hour earlier. The back door was cracked open. I'd left it that way for air, and my stomach dropped. I stepped outside. Scout, come here, buddy. The yard was empty. The gate was still latched. But somehow he was gone. I walked the block calling his name, my voice getting louder, more desperate with every house I passed. A neighbor watering her lawn gave me a sympathetic look. Lost dog. Just adopted him yesterday. I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He's small, brown, and white patches. I'll keep an eye out, she said. I thanked her and kept walking, but the knot in my chest only tightened. This was exactly what I was afraid of. Responsibility. Caring about something fragile, and watching it slip through my fingers anyway. It's why my ex-wife left, isn't it? Because I couldn't hold on to anything that mattered. Because the moment things required effort, real effort, I froze up, pulled back, let the distance grow until there was nothing left to save. And now I'd done it again. 24 hours. That's all it took for me to lose the one thing I'd tried to protect. I searched the park, retraced our route from the night before, checked behind dumpsters and under porches. My phone buzzed with notifications from the lost pet groups I'd posted in, but none of them were sightings, just condolences. Hope you find them. Sending good thoughts. The sun dipped lower. Shadows stretched long across the pavement. Streetlights blinked on one by one, casting everything in that sickly orange glow that makes the world feel lonelier than it already is. I stood on my porch, arms crossed, staring into the growing dark like if I waited long enough, Scout would just reappear. Like hope was something you could force into existence through sheer stubbornness. And then, impossibly, I saw him, a small shape trotting up the sidewalk, ears perked, tail wagging slightly like he'd just been out for a casual evening stroll. Relief crashed over me so hard, I almost laughed. I stepped off the porch, ready to scoop him up, swearing I'd never let him out of my sight again. Scout, come here, buddy. But he stopped, right at the edge of my driveway. Stopped and turned his head back toward the street, waiting. My relief faltered. Scout. He didn't move, just stood there, looking back into the shadows. And then a second shape stepped forward into the light. The Pitbull was huge. Not in an exaggerated way people describe dogs when they're scared, but genuinely, undeniably massive. Broad chest, thick muscular legs, a head that looked like it had been carved from stone. His coat was a muted gray-brown, dull under the streetlight and covered in scars. Thin white lines crisscrossing his shoulders, deeper marks along his neck and jaw. His collar hung loose and torn, the leather split clean through on one side, the buckle dangling uselessly. Beneath it, I could see dark stains. Blood, dried and crusted against matted fur. He wasn't growling, wasn't barking, wasn't doing anything except standing there, perfectly still, watching me with eyes that looked too tired to be threatening. My heart hammered in my chest. Every instinct screamed at me to back up, get inside, lock the door, but I couldn't move. Scout trotted forward a few steps, then stopped and looked back at the Pitbull, then at me, then back at the Pitbull again, like he was introducing us. The Pitbull took one slow step forward, then another, his ribs pressed sharp against his sides with every breath, his gait uneven, favoring his left front leg. Scout positioned himself between us, not cowering, not hiding. He stood there, small and determined, like he was daring me to turn them both away. The pit bull stopped a few feet from my porch. He didn't sit, didn't lower his head in submission. He just stood there like a sentry, still watchful, waiting. I forced myself to breathe, to think, to look past the size, past the scars, past every headline I'd ever read about dangerous dogs. His ears weren't pinned back. His tail wasn't tucked. His mouth was closed, no teeth bared, no tension in his jaw. He wasn't aggressive. He was exhausted. A car door slammed somewhere down the block. The sound echoed sharp and sudden in the quiet street. The pit bull flinched. Hard. His whole body tensed, ears flattening, eyes darting toward the noise like he expected someone come flying at him. But he didn't run, didn't bark, just stood there, frozen, waiting for the threat to materialize. Scout moved closer to him, pressed his small body against the pit bull's front leg. The tension eased. Slowly, the pit bull's ears lifted, his breathing steadied, and he lowered his head toward Scout. That's when I saw it clearly. The wound beneath the torn collar. Raw skin, still pink around the edges, like the leather had been ripped off violently. Recently, Scout licked it. Gentle, careful, like he'd done this before. Like he knew exactly where it hurt. The pit bull didn't pull away. He just stood there, letting the puppy tend him, his eyes half closed in something that looked almost like relief. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't aggression. This wasn't a dangerous dog stalking my neighborhood. This was protection. Scout hadn't run away. He'd escaped. And this pit bull, scarred, starving, barely able to walk, had followed him, not to hurt him, to keep him safe. I looked at them both, standing together in the pale glow of the streetlight, and something inside me shifted. "Okay," I said quietly. "Okay." I opened the door wider and stepped aside. Scout looked back at me, then trotted inside without hesitation. The pit bull didn't move. He just stared at the open doorway like he'd seen this before, like kindness was a trick he'd learned not to fall for. "It's okay," I said again, softer this time. "You're safe here." I didn't know if he believed me, but after a long, aching moment, he limped slowly forward and stepped inside. They didn't go far once they were inside. Scout curled up on the rug near the couch, his usual spot. The pit bull stood in the entryway for a long moment, scanning the room like he was memorizing exits, then slowly lowered himself to the floor beside Scout. Not touching, but close. Protective. I gave them space. Filled 2 bowls with water. Set them down a few feet away, and sat on the couch watching them drink. Scout lapped eagerly. The pit bull drank slow, cautious, eyes flicking up to me between every few gulps. When they finished, I moved closer. Slowly. Hands visible. "Can I look at that collar, buddy?" The pit bull's ears twitched, but he didn't pull away. I knelt down, reached out carefully, and tilted the torn leather toward the light. It was worse up close. The collar hadn't frayed or worn through over time. It had been ripped, violently. The buckle was snapped clean in half, the leather torn at an angle like something or someone had yanked it hard enough to break metal. Beneath it, the skin was raw, not just chafed, torn, like the collar had been too tight for too long, cutting into him with every movement, every breath. Dry blood caked the fur around the wound. Some of it was old, flaking. Some of it looked fresh. Scout lifted his head and whined softly. The pit bull turned toward him, nudging him gently with his nose. I sat back on my heels, staring at them both. This wasn't neglect. This was something worse. "What happened to you, too?" I whispered. Neither of them answered, of course. But the pit bull looked at me with those dark, exhausted eyes, and I felt the weight of everything he couldn't say. I thought about calling someone. Animal control. The police. Anyone who could tell me what I was supposed to do with 2 traumatized dogs who clearly didn't belong to me. But then I imagined them being separated. Scout shoved into one kennel, the pit bull into another. Or worse. Labeled dangerous because of his breed, his scars, the way people would look at him and see a threat instead of survivor. My hand hovered over my phone. Before I could decide, a siren wailed in the distance. Faint at first, then louder, closer. The pit bull's entire body went rigid. He didn't bark, didn't growl. He just froze, every muscle locked tight, ears pinned flat against his skull. His breathing turned shallow, rapid, like he was trying to make himself invisible. Scout scrambled to his feet, pressing himself against the pit bull's side. The siren passed, faded into the distance, but the pit bull didn't relax. He stayed frozen, trembling, staring at the door like whoever was out there was coming for him. I moved slowly, sitting down on the floor a few feet away. "Hey, you're okay. Nobody's coming in here." He didn't look at me, didn't move. Scout licked his face, Frantic little licks like he was trying to pull him back from wherever his mind had gone. Slowly, so slowly, the pit bull's breathing evened out. The trembling stopped. He lowered his head onto his paws, eyes still fixed on the door. That's when I knew. These dogs hadn't wandered away from home. They'd escaped, and whatever they'd escaped from was bad enough that the sound of a siren sent them both into a panic. I looked at the torn collar, the scars, the way Scout positioned himself like a shield even though he weighed less than 20 pounds. "You're not going back there," I said quietly. "I don't know where you came from, but you're not going back." The pit bull's eyes shifted toward me, just for a second, like he wanted to believe me, but didn't know how. I pulled out my phone again, stared at the screen. Animal control felt wrong. Calling the police felt worse. But doing nothing, letting whoever hurt them come looking, felt like the worst option of all. I set the phone down. "We'll figure out," I said, to them, to myself, to the empty room. Scout yawned and tucked himself tighter against the pit bull. The pit bull's eyes finally closed. And for the first time since they'd walked through my door, the house didn't feel quite so empty anymore. The knock came just after sunset. 3 sharp raps on the door. Loud, impatient. Both dogs' heads shot up. Scout scrambled to his feet, ears flat, tail tucked. The pit bull rose slowly, positioning himself between Scout and the door, that same rigid tension from earlier flooding back into his body. I stood up, my heart already racing. "Stay," I said quietly, though I wasn't sure if I was talking to them or myself. I opened the door halfway. A man stood on my porch, mid-40s, thick build, wearing a stained jacket and jeans. His face was hard, impatient, like I'd already wasted too much of his time. "Help you?" I asked. "Yeah." His eyes flicked past me into the house. "You got my dog in there." My grip tightened on the doorframe. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Pitbull, gray-brown, scarred up. Saw him walk in here about an hour ago." His tone wasn't asking. It was telling. "That's my dog. I'm here to get him back." Something cold settled in my chest. "What's his name?" The man hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. "Doesn't matter. He's mine. That's all you need to know. If he's yours, you know his name." His jaw tightened. "Look, man, I don't have time for this. That dog is property. Registered to me. You're holding stolen property right now. And if you don't hand him over, I'll call the cops and have them do it." "Registered?" I crossed my arms. "Then you won't mind showing me the paperwork." "I don't need to show you shit." He stepped closer, voice rising. "That dog belongs to me, and the little one too. Both of them. Now move." "Behind me," Scout whimpered. I glanced back. He was pressed against the couch, trembling, staring at the man in the doorway like he was staring at a nightmare made real. The pit bull didn't move, but his eyes, those exhausted, beaten down eyes, were locked on the man, not in aggression, in recognition. "You're not taking them," I said, turning back. The man's expression darkened. "What did you just say to me?" "I said you're not taking them." "Not until you explain where those scars came from. Not until you tell me why that collar was ripped half off. Not until—" "I don't owe you an explanation." He took another step forward, close enough now that I could smell cigarette smoke and sweat. "Those dogs are mine. I paid for them. And you got about 10 seconds to get out of my way before this gets ugly." Scout bolted, scrambled across the floor and hid behind my legs, pressing himself against my calves like he could disappear into me. The pit bull moved. For the first time since he'd walked through my door, he stepped forward, slow, deliberate, placing himself between the man and Scout, between the man and me. He didn't growl, didn't bare his teeth, just stood there, solid and unmoving, staring at the man with an intensity that made the air feel heavier. The man's eyes narrowed. "You better control that dog before I do it for you." "He's not doing anything," I said. "He's protecting us. From you. He's a goddamn animal, and animals don't get to make decisions." The man reached forward, hand outstretched toward the pit bull's torn collar. "Now move or I'll—" I stepped into the doorway, blocked him with my body. "Touch him, and I'm calling police." The man froze. His hand hovered in the air between us. Fingers still curled like he was ready to grab. For a long, tense moment, neither of us moved. Then he pulled his hand back, smiled. It wasn't friendly. "Fine," he said quietly. "Call them. Let's see who they believe." He turned and walked back to a rusted sedan parked at the curb. Got in, slammed the door, but he didn't drive away. He just sat there, engine off, watching my house. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against the wall, hands shaking. Scout was still pressed against my legs. The pit bull stood in the middle of the room, staring at the door like the man might come crashing through it any second. I pulled out my phone. This time, I didn't hesitate. I dialed 911. The patrol car pulled up 15 minutes later. No sirens, just headlights cutting through the dusk and the quiet crunch of tires on pavement. Officer Barry Schaefer stepped out, mid-30s, calm demeanor. The kind of cop who looked like he actually listened before he acted. He glanced at Sydney's sedan still parked at the curb, then at my porch where I stood waiting. "You the one who called?" he asked. "Yeah, Tim Bass." I gestured towards Sydney's car. "That man claims these dogs are his. But something's not right." Barry nodded slowly. "Let's start inside. I'd like to see the animals first." That surprised me. Most cops would have gone straight to Sydney, gotten inside, made me prove the dogs weren't his. But Barry walked past the sedan without a word and followed me through the front door. Scout was still hiding behind the couch. The pit bull stood in the center of the room, tense but still, watching Barry with wary eyes. Barry stopped just inside the doorway. Didn't move closer, just watched. "How long have you had them?" he asked quietly. "The puppy, Scout. I found him yesterday. The pit bull showed up with him this afternoon. And the man outside showed up about 20 minutes ago. Says they're both his. Call them property. Won't tell me their names. Won't explain the injuries. Just a man I hand them over." Barry crouched down slowly, keeping his distance. His eyes moved over the pit bull, the scars, the torn collar, the 2 visible ribs. He didn't reach out, just observed. "That collar didn't tear on its own," he said. "No, it didn't." Barry stood, pulled a small scanner from his belt. "Mind if I check for a microchip?" "Go ahead." He approached the pit bull carefully, moving slowly, letting the dog see his hands. The pit bull flinched when the scanner beeped near his shoulder, but he didn't pull away, just stood there, trembling slightly, like he'd been conditioned to accept whatever came next. Barry frowned at the screen. "He's chipped, registered to—" He paused, scrolled. "Stolen property database. Flagged 18 months ago. Reported missing from a shelter in Ohio." My stomach dropped. "Stolen?" "Yeah." Barry's jaw tightened. "Happens more than people think. Dogs taken from shelters, sold into fighting rings, used as bait, or he stopped himself, glancing at the pit bull. Let's just say this dog's been through hell." A car door slammed outside. Both dogs reacted instantly. Scout yelped and bolted behind me. The pit bull's ears flattened, his whole body going rigid. Footsteps on the porch. Then Sydney's voice, loud and sharp. "You done wasting time in there? Those are my dogs, and I want them back now." Scout started shaking so violently I could feel it against my legs. Barry's expression hardened. He walked to the door, opened it halfway, and stepped onto the porch. I followed, keeping the dogs behind me. Sydney stood at the bottom of the steps, arms crossed. "About time. Now tell this guy to hand over my property so we can all move on." Barry descended the steps slowly. "Mr. Brown, Sydney Brown, and those dogs are registered to me. So unless you want a lawsuit—" "The pit bull's microchip says otherwise," Barry interrupted. "Says he was reported stolen from a shelter in Ohio over a year ago." Sydney's face twitched. There must be a mistake. I bought him legally. Got papers and everything. You have those papers with you?" "Not on me, but—" "What about the puppy? You said he's yours too. Where'd you get him?" Sydney hesitated. "Bred him myself." "From which dogs?" "I don't— Look, what is this? An interrogation? I came here to get what's mine." And I'm here to make sure that's actually true. Barry pulled out his radio. Dispatch, run a name for me. Sidney Brown. Sidney. Sidney's posture changed. Stiffened. That's not necessary. Just procedure, Mr. Brown. The radio crackled. A voice came through, calm and detached. Sidney Allen Brown, DOB, multiple outstanding warrants. Animal cruelty, illegal operation of a dog fighting ring, assault. Barry's hand moved to his belt. Mr. Brown, I'm going to need you to turn around and place your hands behind your back. This is bullshit. Sidney's voice rose, sharp and furious. You can't. Inside the house, Scout started screaming, not barking, screaming, high-pitched, panicked yelps that didn't sound like they came from a dog. The Pitbull lunged toward the door, not to attack, but to get the Scout. I grabbed his collar, holding him back. It's okay, buddy. It's okay. But it wasn't okay. Barry stepped toward Sidney. Hands behind your back. Now. Sidney tried to run. He made it 3 steps before Barry tackled him. Sidney hit the pavement hard. Barry's knee pressed firm against his back. The radio crackled again, louder now, more detail spilling through in flat, bureaucratic language that made my blood run cold. Suspect wanted in connection with organized dog fighting operation. 3 counts of animal cruelty. 2 counts of assault. 1 count trafficking stolen animals. Warrant issued. Get off me. Sidney thrashed, twisting beneath Barry's grip. This is harassment. Police brutality. Barry didn't flinch. Just calmly pulled Sidney's arms behind his back, metal handcuffs snapping shut with a sound that echoed down the quiet street. You have the right to remain silent. I barely heard the rest. Inside, Scout was still whimpering. The Pitbull paced in tight circles near the door, his breath coming in short, desperate bursts. I knelt down beside him. It's over. He's not getting in. The Pitbull didn't seem to believe me. Barry hauled Sidney to his feet and guided him toward the patrol car. Neighbors had started emerging, porch lights flicking on, faces appearing in windows, a few people stepping out onto their lawns to watch. Those dogs belonged to me. Sidney shouted over his shoulder. You got no right. The Pitbull was stolen from a shelter in Ohio. Barry said evenly. Microchip confirms it. Records show he was taken 18 months ago. Same time 3 other dogs went missing from the same facility. He opened the back door of the patrol car, placed a hand on Sidney's head, and guided him inside. Sidney's voice turned venomous. You don't know what you're doing. That dog's trained. He's dangerous. You're putting people at risk keeping him. He's a victim, Barry said flatly, not a weapon. He closed the door. Sidney's muffled shouting continued from inside the car, but it didn't matter anymore. The sound was contained, distant, powerless. Barry walked back up the porch steps, his expression grim. What was he talking about? I asked. Trained. Barry glanced through the doorway at the Pitbull, who'd finally stopped pacing, and now stood frozen in the center of the room. Dog fighting, Barry said quietly. The scars, the conditioning, the way he responds commands, it all fits. He was likely used as a fighter, forced into rings, matched against other dogs, sometimes to the death. My throat tightened. And Scout. Barry's jaw clenched. Bait dog, smaller breeds, puppies. They're stolen and used to provoke aggression in fighters. Teach them to attack on command. Most don't survive. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I looked at Scout, still trembling behind the couch, at the Pitbull, standing there with those dark, exhausted eyes that had seen things no living creature should ever see. But Scout got out, I said. Looks like it. And your Pitbull. Barry paused. He probably helped him. A second patrol car arrived to transport Sidney. Barry spoke briefly with the other officer, handed over paperwork, then returned to the porch. Animal control's been notified, he said. They'll want to evaluate both dogs, make sure they're not a danger to... They're not. Barry looked at me. They're not dangerous. I said again, firmer this time. You saw them. They're scared, traumatized. but they're not dangerous. Barry was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. I'll make a note of that in my report. But you need to understand, this is going to take time. There'll be evaluations, court hearings, custody disputes if anyone else comes forward claiming ownership. Nobody else is coming forward, I said. These dogs are staying with me. Barry studied my face. Then he glanced back at the pit bull, who'd finally sat down, his body sagging like a marionette with strings cut. All right, Barry said. I'll do what I can. He handed me his card, told me someone would follow up in the morning, then walked back to his car. I watched him drive away. Sydney's face pressed against the rear window, still shouting something I couldn't hear and didn't care to. When the street finally went quiet again, I stepped back inside and closed the door. Scout crept out from behind the couch. Slowly, carefully, like he was testing to see if the danger was really gone. The pit bull didn't move, just sat there staring at nothing. And then, all at once, he collapsed, not injured, not sick, just done. His legs folded beneath him, his head dropped to the floor, and his whole body seemed to exhale for the first time in hours. Maybe days, maybe longer. Scout pressed himself against the pit bull's side, licking his face, his ears, the wound on his neck. I sat down on the floor a few feet away. You're safe now, I whispered. Both of you. The pit bull's eyes slid closed. Scout curled into him, tiny body tucked against scarred ribs. And for the first time since they'd walked into my life, they looked like they might actually believe me. The animal control van pulled up the next morning. I'd barely slept, spent most of the night on the floor with Scout and the pit bull, watching them breathe, making sure they knew I wasn't going anywhere. When the knock came, both dogs lifted their heads. Scout's ears flattened. The pit bull pushed himself up slowly, placing his body between Scout and the door. I opened it to find a woman in a dark blue uniform, clipboard in hand, expression professional but not unkind. Tim Bass. That's me. I'm Officer Ramirez with Animal Control. I'm here to evaluate the 2 dogs involved in last night's incident. She glanced past me. May I come in? I hesitated, then stepped aside. Ramirez entered slowly, eyes immediately assessing the dogs. She crouched down a few feet away, not reaching out, just observing. The pit bull. He'll need to be taken to our facility for a full behavioral evaluation. Standard protocol for dogs involved in fighting operations. My chest tightened. He's not aggressive. I understand, but policy requires. He protected a puppy. I interrupted, helped him escape, followed him here to keep him safe. That's not aggression. That's the opposite. Ramirez's expression softened, but her voice stayed firm. I believe you, but we still need to follow procedure. He'll be evaluated by specialists, and if he passes, you'll be able to apply for foster or adoption. And the puppy? Scout will go to a separate facility. They need to be assessed individually to... No. Ramirez blinked. I'm sorry. You're not separating them. She stood, adjusting her grip on the clipboard. Mr. Bass, I understand you form an attachment, but this isn't negotiable. These dogs have been through trauma. They need professional evaluation, proper medical care. They need each other. Scout started whimpering. His small body trembled, eyes darting between me and Ramirez like he understood exactly what was being discussed. The pit bull moved. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped toward Scout and lowered his head, covering the puppy with his neck and shoulder, shielding him. Scout pressed into him, whimpering louder. Ramirez watched, her professional mask slipping for just a moment. Look at them, I said quietly. You think putting them in separate cages is going to help them heal? You think tearing them apart after everything they survived is the right thing to do? It's not about right or wrong. It's about protocol. Then change the protocol. Ramirez sighed, frustrated. I can't just... They stay together. My voice came out harder than I intended. Steadier. Or I leave with neither. The room went silent. Ramirez stared at me. Mr. Bass, if you interfere with this seizure, I can have you charged with obstruction. Then charge me. We stood there, locked in a standoff, The only sound, Scout's quiet whimpering and the Pitbull's steady breathing. A voice came from the doorway. He's right. I turned. Barry Schaefer stood on the porch, still in uniform, holding 2 cups of coffee like he'd just stopped by on his way to work. Ramirez frowned. Officer Schaefer, this isn't. I was here last night, Barry said calmly. Saw the whole thing. These dogs aren't dangerous. They're traumatized, and separating them would cause more harm than good. The policy clearly states. The policy also allows for special circumstances. Barry stepped inside, handed me one of the coffees. I'll co-sign a temporary foster arrangement. Mr. Bass keeps both dogs under supervision. You conduct evaluations here instead of at the facility. Everybody wins. Ramirez looked between us, jaw tight. Finally, she exhaled. Fine, temporary foster. But if there's any sign of aggression, any incident at all, they're coming with me. Understood. Understood, I said. She pulled out a stack of forms, started flipping through pages. You'll need to sign here, an initial here. I signed everything without reading it. 20 minutes later, Ramirez left. Barry lingered on the porch. Thank you, I said. He shrugged. You did the hard part. I just backed you up. Still, thank you. Barry glanced back at the dogs, now curled together on the floor, finally relaxed. What are you going to name him? I looked at the pit bull, scarred, exhausted, still watching the door like he was waiting for the next threat. Atlas, I said, because he's been carrying weight no one should have to bear. Barry nodded. Good name. He left. I closed the door, locked it, and sat down on the floor beside Scout and Atlas. You're staying, I whispered. Both of you. Atlas's eyes finally closed. Scout yawned and tucked himself tighter against Atlas's chest. And for the first time in a long time, my house felt like a home. The house settled into silence that night. Real silence. Not the oppressive kind that had filled my evenings for months, but something softer, peaceful. Scout was asleep on the rug, curled into a tight ball against Atlas's chest. His little paws twitched occasionally, chasing something in his dreams. Something good, I hoped. Atlas lay beside him, head up, eyes half open, facing the door. Even in rest, his protective instinct wouldn't let go. Couldn't let go. Maybe it never would. I sat on the couch with a mug of tea I wasn't drinking, just watching them. 2 survivors who'd found each other in the worst circumstances imaginable and refused to let go. It could have been so different. If I'd walked past that park bench without stopping. If I'd kept driving instead of bringing Scout home. If I'd turned them away when Atlas appeared on my porch, scarred and broken and desperate. Any one of those moments, and they'd still be out there. Or worse, back with Sydney, locked in cages, waiting for the next fight, the next wound, the next time they'd be used as weapons or bait or disposable things that didn't matter. But they did matter. They'd always mattered. I just hadn't known it until I saw them standing together under that streetlight, refusing to be separated even when the world had given them every reason to give up on each other. The adoption paperwork came through 2 weeks later. Barry called ahead, warned me it would be fast-tracked given the circumstances. The judge saw the case file, he'd said, saw the photos of their injuries, read my report. There's no question where these dogs belong. I signed the papers at the dining room table while Scout napped in a patch of sunlight, and Atlas watched from the doorway, still cautious, still waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's official, I told him, setting down the pen. You're mine, and I'm yours. Scout's tail wagged lazily. Atlas blinked once, slow and deliberate, like he was processing what that meant. Maybe he didn't fully understand yet. Maybe he wouldn't for a long time. Trust wasn't something you could rebuild overnight, not after it had been shattered so completely. But we had time now, all the time in the world. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the familiar sounds of the house, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the floorboards, the soft rhythm of 2 dogs breathing in the next room. I'd spent months trying to fill the emptiness left by my divorce, convinced myself that I just needed to get through it, survive it, wait for the loneliness to fade on its own. But it hadn't worked that way. The emptiness didn't fade because I waited. It faded because I stopped waiting and started protecting something that needed me more than I needed to feel sorry for myself. I wasn't just a companion anymore. I was a protector, a caretaker, the person who stood between danger and the ones who couldn't stand on their own. And that meant something. It meant everything. I got up quietly, padded into the living room. Scout and Atlas were exactly where I'd left them. Scout curled tight, Atlas watching the door. I sat down on the floor a few feet away. "You know you don't have to do that anymore, right?" I said softly. "Nobody's coming through that door. Not Sydney. Not anyone who wants to hurt you." Atlas's ears twitched, but he didn't look away from the door. "Okay," I whispered. "You keep watch. I'll be right here." I leaned back against the couch, pulled a blanket over my lap. Scout stirred, lifted his head, blinked sleepily at me. Then he uncurled himself, padded over, and climbed onto my lap. Atlas watched. His gaze shifted from the door to Scout to me, like he was calculating risk, weighing options. And then, slowly he stood. He crossed the room, lowered himself beside me, and rested his head on my knee. Not facing the door this time. Facing Scout. Facing me. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding and rested my hand on his scarred head. "We're safe?" I whispered. "All of us." Outside, the neighborhood slept. Inside, 3 survivors sat together under one roof, finally believing, maybe for the first time, that tomorrow didn't have to hurt. Scout yawned. Atlas's eyes drifted closed. And I stayed right there, keeping watch over the ones who'd spent so long protecting everyone but themselves.